All right, everyone, welcome to my channel. My name is Sydney Rosant, and this is a Love is Blind recap. I'm recapping the third batch of episodes that came out, I think it was last night. Yeah, it came out last night. So before we get started, I know there's a lot to unpack with this episode. I'm actually gonna go grab my glasses real quick, so forgive me, but I'll be right back. Alrighty, I have the bifocals on now, so I can actually see my notes that I need to reference for this recap. But like I said before, my name is Sydney Rosant. Please follow me on social media. I'm gonna link them down below in the description, and I'll have them pop up on the screen right here. And let's get straight into it. So we end last episode on a cliffhanger. What's gonna happen with Matt and Colleen? Pretty much, Colleen went to the club. It's a weekday. Matt is really upset. In true Love is Blind fashion, we don't find out until a little bit later in the 8th episode. So pretty much, Colleen is like dancing. She's practicing ballet, and she tells us that she and Matt had a conversation about, his tendency to run away, and they like work things out, and everything is great now, just like it was after their first argument. I'm starting to see a little bit of a pattern appear with Matt and Colleen. So Matt introduces her to his friends. They pretty much air him out. Like, they tell all of his business, how he hasn't been in a serious relationship since his divorce. They call him two-date Matt. He's extremely emotional. He's been through a lot. If I'm Colleen and I'm hearing these things, my one thought is, how can he be certain that he's ready for a marriage if he's not over what happened in his last relationship, if he's only been on insignificant dates once or twice? Like, he's not had any experience in a relationship that has been positive. So how can he be married to me in the next 5 days? Well, does she ask that question? No. It also feels like Colleen herself has never been in a serious relationship, because when she introduces him to her parents, they're pretty much like, yeah, we've never met any of her boyfriends. I mean, they don't seem to last long, right? And I'm just like, wow, there's a lot of inexperience for people who truly believe they're ready for marriage. That's a lot of inexperience to have. And the other thing that I noticed with Colleen in particular is that they keep trying to like convince people that everything's okay. Like, she in particular, like her conversation with her mom, where her mom was like, okay, so what conflicts have you guys dealt with? Like, what is the conflict? And she's like kind of being dodgy. She's not being direct about it. She's not really just being like, look, this is what was going on, and just laying it all out there like that. She keeps on being vague, and her mom obviously clocks it and is like, you're not really telling us everything, but it is what it is. And do I see Colleen and Matt lasting? I don't. There's even a conversation that they have at the aquarium where Matt pretty much is like, okay, right now, would you say yes to me? And Colleen admits that she would not say yes, which, obviously isn't really it's not a good sign for their relationship that she said yes to him. I don't blame her. Every time something happens, you threaten to leave her. You literally packed your bags for no reason. And the clarification that they made when Matt introduced her to his friends about like what went down was that I guess there was some sort of miscommunication, and the guys decided to go back home after they all met up. And the girls were like, let's just have a girls' night, because they went in separate Ubers or something. And then Matt just flipped out, and I'm confused. I'm like, how can you flip out if you knew where she was going? Like, were you upset that she didn't come home early enough? Like I said in the previous video that I made about Love is Blind, Matt's fear is palpable. Like, I feel his fear of like rejection, his fear of betrayal. Like, it's terrifying, and he hasn't done anything to like work on it. He's just like, these are the things that are holding me back, and I struggle to do this, I struggle to do that. Okay, well, go get some help. Go get some help. You don't need a wife right now. You need a therapist. We're moving on to Raven and SK, and after these batches of episodes, I've come to the conclusion that the Love is Blind producers hate Raven. They do. They hate Raven because she's normal. Well, no, she's weird, but we didn't get any like background on her at all, right? Like they made her appear super aloof, rude, this and that. I really think Raven is just weird, right? She is a product of her circumstances. It doesn't seem like her father was in the house. Her family is really, really small. She has no siblings, right? Only children are always a little bit, right? They're always a little. But let me just get into Raven and SK. So in episode 8, they are like talking about, the tea and everything and just interacting. And I said, I see it now. I see their chemistry. I see their vibe. I see why Raven did not give a crap about the conversation she was having with Bartise, because she vibed so well with SK. Like, they're joking, they're bantering or whatever. And I really liked how SK, at least in this portion, seemed to be very accepting of who she is, her complexities. Like, that's what he wants in a woman, or so he says. But it does get a little bit, a little bit testy with SK. I'm very confused with him. I was confused in the previous 7 episodes, and I'm left even more confused now with like what he's actually looking for in a woman. But let me continue. Raven goes to try on Nigerian, I can't remember what it's called, but she goes to try on like a head wrap. I've actually worn something similar to this because I'm also West African, but she's talking to, I think, SK's sister-in-law, maybe, possibly, I'm not sure, and SK's mom about what her duties are as a wife. And pretty much, right, Nigerian culture is extremely patriarchal. And they're like, you need to have rice and stew ready for your husband after a long day of work. It doesn't matter how much money you make. Even if you make more money than your husband, you still, like, I'm like, ooh, I felt bad for Raven because Raven is not Nigerian. It doesn't even seem like she knows anybody Nigerian. I'm not gonna lie. I think SK might be the first Nigerian she's ever like crossed paths with, especially the way she was acting in the last episode, right? So the expectation that his family has on her, and it seems like him by extension has with her, is a little bit like, like how can you expect somebody who's grown up American for 28, 29 years, I don't know how old Raven is, how can you expect that person to conform to a culture that is completely opposed to who she is? It doesn't really make sense, and that expectation is incredibly unrealistic. And so she's very uncomfortable, like visibly uncomfortable with the conversation, and she goes and talks to SK about this. I don't know if it was that day or the next day about how that went. And so they're talking about like the importance of family and how this is one of the things that they're at odds with, because family is really, really important to SK, and she just doesn't have a supportive family. Like her family's not coming to the wedding. She doesn't have siblings. And I think she's trying to explain that, like, look, I am who I am regardless of my family. Like, whereas SK, his identity is his family. And this is the difference between cultures, right? America has a very individualistic, I make it on my own, pull myself up by my bootstraps kind of culture, whereas Nigerian culture and a lot of culture that's just not Western is a lot more tribal, where family is super important. Family determines identity, right? And so we're watching the culture clash happen before our eyes. The other thing I noticed about that conversation was I couldn't tell if this was an argument or just like a verbal disagreement, because the editing was weird and they turned up the volume on this like music in the background. I don't know if y'all peeped, but like it was mad, like it just made the conversation feel weird. I couldn't tell like if there was tension or if there wasn't tension, if that makes sense. They do go on a couple dates after, and when they're talking about their relationship and they're talking about their dynamic, it's very clear that out of all the relationships, Brandon and Alexa included, they are the most thoughtful. They seem to be the most connected with why they like the person. It's clear that like there are reasons that they like each other. It's not just, we connected in the pods and we fell in love. Like, there are specific reasons they like each other. And I really, really appreciated that, right? And you can tell how self-aware both of them are, where you have Raven, who knows that she's kind of cold. She knows that she's slow to open up. She knows that she's maybe not the nicest, right? And SK, who is just wants to accept her for her. And I think all along that's what Raven was looking for, someone who is very pretty by society standards, who probably has been attracting a bunch of Bartises, finally gets to attract somebody who can see her for her mind and love her for her mind and who she is and her personhood. And so I really appreciate those conversations. Now we get to the point where they're going down the aisle and Raven says yes and SK says no. And the scene that really broke me was the mom being like, whispering like, I do. Because SK's mom loved Raven and I could feel that love. SK said no, and I wasn't upset at SK. And I think the reason that he gave in the end was really fair, right? Because he said like, there's a lot of hurdles that we have in our relationship. She's not willing to move with me to California. Like, she's not being flexible enough, that kind of stuff. This is where I got really confused with SK, because the first scene of Love is Blind, I'm talking episode 1, scene 1, he said the reason why he came on the show was because he doesn't want to be judged for anything, right? He doesn't want to be judged for his race. He doesn't want to be judged for his nationality. And now we're finding out that those things are, well, not maybe not race, but his culture is extremely important, to the point where his wife has to be not only culturally sensitive, but she has to conform. And I feel like that's just a ridiculous expectation to have, not only on Love is Blind, but just in general. I think he made the right decision. And honestly, quite frankly, I don't know. They might be able to make it work in the long run. Like, if they can just extend the time period and just date, right? Something that's a low pressure, get to know each other better, get to enjoy each other better, and give Raven time to actually understand Nigerian culture, right? Understand those nuances that she missed in that really short period of time that they had. I think they could work. But at the same time, with the way SK is speaking, he just needs to find a Yoruba woman, or at least a Nigerian woman, because what he wants out of Raven in the end, even if they do date for 2-3 years and then get married, I don't even know if she'd be willing to give it then, to be fair. So that was kind of heartbreaking. Raven's reaction to the rejection was sad. I felt so bad for her. And the fact that she didn't have any of her family there, I don't know if I think maybe a couple of her friends were there. It just felt awful. My heart went out in that moment, because I don't think Raven has ever really put her heart on her sleeve like that. And I really appreciated SK's mom for just embracing her the way that she did. That was so, so, so sweet. The MVP of this show was SK's mom. I said it. Next is Brennan and Alexa. Again, we go through this batch of episodes and there's relatively zero conflict, which I don't want to say that's a bad thing, but based on the previews, it seems like, and even with the things that Brennan was saying in this episode, we've not fought one time, it is kind of weird. And it's one of those things that you need to know how the person that you're with is going to handle conflict, right? You need to know that before getting in a relationship, and you can't create a fight, right? Because that's just unnatural and that's toxic. But at the same time, you need to know. He meets Alexa's friends. Alexa's friends are a little annoying, I'm not gonna lie. Alexa's friends were annoying. They reminded me of Raven's friends, just a little bit obnoxious. It felt like there was probably a little bit of performing for the cameras going on, trying to get their 15 seconds of fame. That was a vibe I got, but not really. They're not really significant anyways. And Brennan meets with her family again to learn more about Judaism and the process of converting. And he's serious about embracing her culture, which I thought was cool, until the dad mentioned a prenup that I guess comes along with the religion, which is pretty much if they get divorced, Brennan will still have to take care of Alexa, which is ridiculous. It was a ridiculous prenup. I literally wrote down in my notes, I said, I don't think Brennan should agree to that prenup. Brennan, for the past 8 episodes, talked about how his family grew up in abject poverty and things are just now getting better. So if they get married, he's still supposed to take care of Alexa? Alexa, who lives a millionaire lifestyle? Alexa, whose only bill is makeup? He's supposed to take over? No. If I was Brennan, I would talk to Alexa about this prenup and be like, is there any negotiation that we can do? And it looks like it's going to be a no from Brennan, just based on the previews, which, if that's the prenuptial agreement, then I agree with Brennan's no. But they could say yes. You never know. Previews are just meant to trick us anyways. So next we have Cole and Zanab. So Cole apologizes for basically like making her feel awful, making her feel not pretty and all that stuff. And then they have a cute moment on the top of this bridge where Zanab, I guess she gets them like a lock, and this is a bridge where you put locks on the bridge, and then they put like C and Z and like a little note on the lock or whatever, and it's supposed to like, I guess it's supposed to symbolize them being stuck together. And while on the bridge, Cole tells Zanab that he talked to his family about her, and the decision that the family came to was that they don't want to meet Zanab until Cole and Zanab are married. First, Cole's been married before, and I think he divorced in like 2-3 months or whatever, and he got married super fast. Cole's family is tired of him. They're tired of him. They're tired of him because he probably does crazy stuff all the time. Also, his apartment was very indicative of just his like lack of discipline, nastiness, and immaturity. There's so many red flags here. I don't know why Zanab is still with him, but that was the biggest red flag to me, because later in his Bachelor episodes, Zanab tells the girls at the bachelorette party that Cole's family followed her on social media and told Cole that she's not the type of girl that they saw for him. I'm telling you right now, somebody in the comment sections was like, you can't say that Cole's a racist because like, having a preference doesn't make you racist. I get it. Having a preference does not make you racist, but deciding to date outside of your preference, right? Outside of your racial preference, and treating that person as if they are less than and belittling that person constantly is racism. And his family backing him up by being like, we're not meeting her. Racism. Telling her I usually date lilies as opposed to Zanab's. Racism. Cole is a racist. It might not be super overt. He might not be yelling out all lives matter, white lives matter, whatever, but like it's there. And the only reason Zanab hasn't clocked it is because A, she's like white passing, and B, she was raised by white people. So she has really no understanding of like what's really going on and why he thinks he can get away with talking to her the way he talks to her. But it gets worse, right? So there's this argument that happens when I guess Cole decides that he wants to cook for Zanab. I don't know if he told her that he could cook or he was just like, we can do this like as a fun activity, right? But like everything Cole does, it was subpar. He made Brussels sprouts, which is just like one of those vegetables that I don't think anyone really enjoys. He puts them in the oven with like no seasoning on them. I was like, oh, we're just gonna eat it like that. He makes chicken. Zanab points out there's no seasoning on there. And he's kind of just like, Cole's very chaotic, right? And he's like shooting Nerf stuff at her and like just doing a whole lot, and she's visibly annoyed, which for some reason triggers her. Now, Zanab is a nag. She's a nagger. She's a nagger, and it's annoying. Naggers can be annoying, but Cole, like, he is like the antithesis of a nagger, right? He's the type of person that would trigger a nagger into their most like worked up state, because he just does weird stuff all the time, weird and uncalled for, like, wow. And I guess, Zanab pretty much took over the cooking, and I don't think she should have done that. I disagreed with her doing that. When she was doing that, I was cringing on the inside, because he said he was going to cook for her. He probably really just wanted to like do something nice. And, you know, she took it over. I felt like, even though it probably wasn't going to taste good, she should have just let him do it and then joked around like, okay, by the way, your chicken was dry. Your chicken didn't taste like anything. But Cole, he blows this out of proportion. He's like, well, do you want to marry me? Like, do you want to, you always pick on me for these things and make me feel like I'm less than, and like, you know, like, do you actually want to marry me? And then she's like, yes, I want to marry you. And then he flips it around and he's like, well, why should I marry you? And I'm like, what's going on? Then it gets testy, right? It started off bad, but it gets real testy. And he's like, something about she's not sweet enough. Something about how, you know, she's not sweet enough for him. She's not like soft enough for him. She's sitting there like, what? Then he says, are you bipolar? With a smile, with a little smirk on his face. Are you bipolar? That was the most insulting thing I think that's been said so far this season. Cole takes the cake, calling his fiance, asking her with a smile on his face if she's bipolar. He's very manipulative. He said something crazy in the first batch of episodes, or maybe the second batch of episodes, where he was like, I don't like you when you're like this, and when she was just asking for more affection, I think, or complaining about how he didn't find her attractive. And I'm like, ugh, like he's ugh. Cole is ugh. Like, and the fact that he looks nasty too. After seeing his apartment, I know that man, it smells. I can't stand him. Ooh. Oh, I'm sorry. Like, I'm going crazy. But every time I looked at Cole, I'm like, you're gross. Like, you're very gross. He looks gross. He does. He looks very musty. He looks very stinky. All right, I'm sorry, guys. I'm really sorry. But she finally puts her foot down and, like, pretty much leaves. She's, like, over it. And as per usual, Cole, like, races her down. He's like, why did you leave like that? And da-da-da-da. And they kind of come to some sort of resolution where he's like, you know what? It was just, like, an argument, and it was both of us. He didn't say both of us. He was like, it's neither of ours faults. I was like, wow. The way he was able to just completely skirt all accountability for, first of all, creating an argument out of nowhere, doubting her will to be in the relationship, and then being like, I don't want to be in the relationship because you're so whatever. You're so, like, mean to me. Don't really understand what's going on there. I hope Zanab says no. I pray she says no, just for her own mental health. Not even for me, for her. Do it for yourself, sis. Do it for yourself. So the last couple I have here is Bartise and Nancy. Bartise, he'll never be able to turn it around for me. He'll never be able to turn it around. It doesn't matter what he does. It doesn't matter what he does or says. He'll never be able to turn it around. I already don't like him. But I will say, Bartise is in it for the check, okay? Bartise got his act together because that's 200, 300K a year. 200, 300K a year, all right? He said, I'm going to get over all these problems that I've imagined, all these problems that I've made up. I'm going to get over them. Because there's a bag at risk, okay? There's a bag at risk. Say what you want about Bartise, but he's a city girl. He's a city girl for real. And I do think it was very frustrating when he kept on acting like there's so many things I had to get over, you know, the abortion thing. It was a conversation, right? Literally a conversation about abortion. And he brought that up to his family so that his family wouldn't like Nancy. He didn't have to bring up that conversation. He's like, well, they got off on such a bad foot because of you. Because of you. You could have kept that to yourself. All he does is talk. He's such a blabber. Bartise is a blabbermouth. I really don't like him. I don't like him at all. Like I said, there's nothing he can do about it. And then the whole, like, you know, she owns a house with her ex. That, I will say, is the only legitimate concern that he should have. That would be an eyebrow raiser for me. A big eyebrow raiser. I'd be like, Nancy, girl, what? And the fact that she didn't tell him, again, I would have... She told him about selling her eggs. We wouldn't tell him about the fact that she had an ex. She has an ex that she owns a home with, who, if he gets upset, could screw her and make her pay the mortgage for that house. But it is what it is. I think, again, another thing that he was just kind of like blowing out of proportions. You don't really care because you know that there's money that she could give you the life that you can't afford currently. And Nancy and Bartise, they have a conversation about, you know, him not being attracted to her or whatever. And I liked how Nancy approached this conversation. She was very direct. She was like, look, how you talked about that was immature. Like, she was like, I usually like to give out grace, but that was the wrong way to handle it. And at that point, I felt like there's a bit of a mother-son dynamic between the two. And it's because not only is Bartise 25, but he's like, has the maturity of a 15-year-old, right? So it just makes it way worse. And Nancy is a woman. Like, she's 30-something years old. She's got a real estate business. She's doing other stuff on the side. Like, Nancy has her life together. They're just not compatible at all. I feel like when Nancy said in the past, like, I would not usually go for a 25-year-old, she should have stuck with it. She should have stuck with it. And yeah, I just felt like Bartise is a love bomber, right? All of a sudden, if he flips a switch in this batch of episodes, he's back to loving her. He's back to being attracted to her. He even said like, oh, it's not really a problem anymore. We got over it. Because she was never unattractive in the first place, right? The difference between this batch of episodes and the previous batch of episodes is that Bartise hasn't interacted with Raven. That's literally the only difference. Seeing Raven, right, it triggered him, or I don't know, like it made him think that Nancy was ugly all of a sudden. I'm not sure, but like their story ends on a cliffhanger. It's probably gonna be a no, and I hope it's a no from Nancy, but it might be a no from Bartise, because I think he's gonna get like some serious cold feet because he's too young. He's too young. He's too immature. Bartise needs to live his life. He needs to live his life and do his thing, as opposed to like forcing himself to get married to someone that he's not attracted to be quite honest, who I don't know if he likes Nancy or not. I'm not sure. He also seems to be highly insecure, like the way he was basically begging Raven for a compliment back. Like, he's got problems. Bartise has problems, and he doesn't need to be a married man. And Nancy, I don't know why Nancy is sticking it through. I'm thinking maybe she just wants to have kids really badly, or is just ready to not be single. But oof, child. But that's all we have for this recap. Thank you for watching. If you have, I'm very appreciative of that. Remember to like, comment, and subscribe for more content like this. Again, I do have a podcast. You can go on my channel and watch all of the episodes if you like. I'd greatly appreciate it. I think it's a pretty interesting podcast myself. But yeah, that's all I got for you guys. Thank you, and peace.